Welcome to Read and Think. This is where a book that I'm reading, certain phrases catch my eye and make me think, and I'm sharing with you. First up, Thomas Sowell in his Cultures and Conquests book. Englishmen introduced railroads to the rest of the world, not only by the example of railroad building in their own country, but also by themselves building and manning the first railroads in Germany, Argentina, India, Russia, Uganda, Kenya, and Malaya, as well as financing the building of railroads in the US, France, and elsewhere. The railroads in turn were revolutionary in their social consequences. The concentration of the world's populations along coasts and near rivers was reduced as land transport into interior hinterlands became cheaper. This was even more of a factor in countries with large landlocked interiors such as Germany, the US, and Russia than England itself. It has been said that the characteristic feature of 19th century economic development was the development of continents instead of coastlines. This is where Thomas Sowell excels in giving insights not that were just economic, but had a broad-reaching impact on entire populations. In Germany, for example, if you were deep in Bavaria, you were a very isolated group, and in southern Germany near Switzerland or even Austria or any of those countries, Galicia, Silesia, these which were huge coal mining areas in Germany and Poland, when you couldn't extract the coal, you'd have to take it by cart and send it to the port, where the ships, if they had those particular steam engines, could use the coal. But until you had railroads, you couldn't do it in mass and do it enough to actually feed those engines. So that would, of course, increase trade, the travel of people, the travel of ideas. So that somebody who had a brilliant idea in Bavaria could share with somebody, let's say, in northern Germany near Hamburg. So railroad transportation becoming cheaper and cheaper opened up entire countries, and ones that are as immense as the United States and certainly Russia really benefited from those railroads. If you look at a map of the United States and you look at railroad maps, you will see that east of the Mississippi is where massive railroad development occurred. West of the Mississippi, not so much. There's only a half a dozen major rail lines, I think. But you could see how that mattered so much to the United States. And why the Mississippi? Because it's one of the largest navigable rivers in the world. And again, the railroad led to the river. So it's kind of an interesting outlook that you could see Thomas Sowell is looking to see how society changes with these inventions. Germany, in particular, was freed from its dependence on the North Sea ports, which could freeze over in the winter, and became instead a hub of railroad networks that stretched across Europe. As a nation located in the center of the continent, Germany could, for example, ship its own and other countries' goods in all directions, establishing rail links that ultimately reached the Mediterranean and through it, the Middle East. Inside Germany, railroads made it economically feasible to bring the iron ore of Lorraine to the coal fields of Westphalia, enabling Germany to become major producers of steel and with it, one of the leading industrial powers of the world. One indication of the historic role of the British in bringing railroads to Germany is that of the 240 locomotives in Germany in 1840, 166 came from England. So what railroads did, British railroads and engineering, is open up Germany. And by actually bringing the coal fields of Lorraine, which is an area located in southwest Germany, near the French border, I believe, to Westphalia, to the northwest of Germany, combining those two elements allowed it to make steel. Steel, of course, built ships, railroads, vast industries and a lot more, particularly along I think, the Ruhr, which is Germany's industrial heartland. If that's a fascinating thing, is by 1840, the railroads had allowed a country like Germany, which had a certain ethics of hard work, organizational capacity, and other things, and the highly skilled and literate population, to make a leap forward. And so you have to ask, what is the next engine that we have in the present that's going to make a leap forward? Is it, we saw the internet, we're now seeing artificial intelligence. There's other possibilities on the horizon, things that could affect us in terms of data centers, etc. So, what are these kinds of elements that are coming about that could be an industrial revolution of a new type? And can you see it opening up other areas? That's an interesting question to ask because it's happened before, numerous occasions. If you think about writing and the idea of having written knowledge, once something is written down, it could be transported. That knowledge could go some other part of the world, certainly another country, and enlighten people and change their lives. Railroads did the same, the internet did the same, and so will artificial intelligence. So it's an interesting analogy to see when these two different things can come together, what's the third thing being created? The British role in the world's shipping was no less dramatic. In addition to inventing the steam engine that facilitated massive international immigration and made possible the international shipment of bulky and relatively low value commodities such as wheat, the British built many of the world's transoceanic ships. In addition to carrying much of the world's international commerce in British ships for other countries as well. The British shipyards built more than half the tonnage of steamships used by France, Russia, Spain, Holland, Italy, and Belgium. Thus, English fish was sold in Switzerland, and even Canadian salmon was sold on the European continent. This meant a lot of people were on the move. Thousands of Russians went to Germany when it was time to harvest crops, just as Italian agricultural workers went to Argentina to harvest for the harvest, and Italian buildings trades workers traveled seasonally to the United States. Transatlantic travel became quicker, cheaper, and safer. The steamships also had another interesting effect. They largely were able to rid the seas of centuries-old worldwide scourge of piracy. For steamships were too expensive for freebooters to finance, and sailing ships could no longer suffice to enable pirates to catch steamers. So the British actually changed a couple different mechanisms of transportation, both railroads internally and ships, by increasing the use of steel, iron and steel, along with steam engines, which made it sailing much faster but also predictable. You didn't have to rely on the wind. What's interesting is that faster transport not only moved goods across the ocean, but also people, so that they could literally take a trip and go work seasonally, which very much surprised me that Italian workers would come to the United States and return home, or people go to Argentina for the season and then come back, that it was so cheap at that time to actually justify that kind of travel, and that it was possible and safer. The idea that it eradicated piracy because pirates, number one, couldn't catch the steamships, and number two, even if they could buy one, they couldn't really maintain it, nor could they get the coal and parts necessary in go up the River Thames to London and say, hey, we're pirates and we want to order parts for our ship. Not likely it's going to happen. So there's a number of things that changed dramatically. Travel on the high seas, as it were, and between countries to facilitate both goods and ideas and people. And when people moved, they acquired skills and knowledge of other people. And so that actually, in and of itself, I think created a bit of the first network between countries were these travel networks, rail as well as shipping. And the same thing kind of applies today when we're thinking of the internet and how far we can reach. So it's interesting to see how an invention will change the world and affect our reach.